Hello, welcome to another episode of Drinking with Comics. I'm Sean, and we're going to do our Wednesday thing. First, the beer. This is the second. The last week I did O'Fallon Brewery's Scotch cookie, something or other. Delicious, delicious stout that used, was it oatmeal cookie? This is along the same lines. This is the O'Fallon Brewing's Knotty, which is that's Knotty, which is a peanut butter pretzel beer. I don't know how this is going to go. Oh man, you get the peanut butter right off the fucking bat. I want to point out the glass that I am using. I believe I've been using the last couple of weeks, maybe. This is from King Harbor Brewing. This was their 5th anniversary. My Most Horrible Library co-host Chris Saunders got this glass for me when he attended the 5th anniversary party. And one of the things, I left California August 1st of 2022. And I've been back 3 times. And one of the things that I was very saddened by was the fact that King Harbor Brewing had closed up shop. They had one at the pier in Redondo Beach, and they had one on Hawthorne, and I think it's 182nd, and apparently they closed up. But I noticed recently on their Instagram account, I believe they're coming back. So I am super excited about that. I'm hoping to be able to hit that brewery when I go back again in about 6 months. I tend to rotate back in every 6 months for 2 weeks. And one of the things I do, I go to my favorite breweries. So there's Monkish, obviously, in Torrance, like one of the best breweries. New one I found, Operation or Project Barley, used to be Yorkshire. Also, I believe it's Torrance or Gardena, right in that area. Fantastic. Only place I've seen in the States. The only place I've seen outside of rural Ireland or England that has cask keg pumps. Totally different thing. Really, really amazing brewery. Great food too. They do a full English breakfast, really good. But yeah, enough about that. So okay, so this is O'Fallon's Knotty peanut butter pretzel beer. Oh, the nose is very distinct. Holy shit. That's going to take a couple minutes for me to decide. I'm going to drink it either way. If we're going on a 5-star rating system, and the other O'Fallon's from last week was a 5, easily. Thinking this is a 3 right off the bat. The taste is there. There's something about the back end I don't know that I like, but any which way, I only got a couple of these, and I will enjoy them sparingly, regardless, because it is definitely an experience. And these beers that utilize pretzel, peanut butter, oatmeal cookie, they're not something to me that you have a session with anyway. It's like you have one and then you move on to something else. Okay, so let's talk comics. So this week, a little bit of a rehash. So I'm going to only touch on the things that came out this week because I had, being out of town for 2 weeks, well, really 3 weeks before going into the first episode. Since coming back with this show, I touched on Void Rivals. I touched on New Burn. So I'm not going to talk so much about those. Both of those came out. Void Rivals 5, fantastic. Really, just absolutely fantastic. Let's start with Uncanny Avengers number 3. So this book, I had renounced the X-Men for a long time. Grew up with Claremont, love that stuff. I love Morrison's run in the early 2000s. I like some of what Bendis did. It was circa 2015, maybe 2013. It's such a sprawling family of titles every month, and it just, crossovers and events and shit. I don't read that stuff really so much anymore. However, somebody talked me into reading House and Powers, and I loved it. And that's the Hickman stuff that really redefined the X-Men. And I didn't think there was any way to do a fresh take on the X-Men anymore. And that is the freshest take ever. So I've been reading since then, and Kieran Gallon is writing it, and Jerry Duggan and Al Ewing. And those are the books that I read. I read Immortal, X-Men, I read X-Men Red, which we've talked about on the show, and I read the regular X book. And I enjoy all of those. I ventured out a little bit and haven't had as much luck with some of the surrogates, so I just stick with those. So when they did the whole Hellfire Gala massacre thing, which I thought was awesome, I wondered how that would, like, what would be the new shakeup for these titles. So one of the things that came out of that, the only one that came out of it as a fresh title, Uncanny Avengers, I tentatively decided to pick up the first issue and quite liked it. Uncanny Avengers, the first time we saw it, I believe, was Remender at the end of his X-Force run, did an Uncanny Avengers that I thought was just stellar. And until the end, where you started to see, like, with that Axis shit, and you could see he was losing kind of control to the editorial bullpen, and you could tell, because after he left that book, he announced he was only doing creator-owned stuff, and it's worked out very well for him, and I love his stuff. So, but that Uncanny Avengers book was good. I didn't think they could repeat it, but, you know, in the era that we're in, where humanity now, like, really, I mean, it's funny to say, because it's always been, oh, hated and feared by humanity, more so because of everything that orchestrated in the Hellfire Gala this year. I wondered how they would spin that. So having this Unity squad, which is made up of both Avengers and then mutants, is really good. It's working out very well. And the big endearing mystery is who is running around in the Captain Krakoa suit, basically villainizing humans, or I'm sorry, villainizing mutants to humans by attacking, you know, political parties or whatever. I'm pretty sure, spoiler, it's Nuke, because there was a flashback in the second issue of this where they showed, like, a flashback to Captain America and Ben, the reporter. I'm blanking on his name. I want to say Riley, but no, it's not Ben Riley, the Spider-Man clone. They referenced the last time they met or something like that, and they showed a flashback to Daredevil, and it involved Nuke. It was the Frank Miller stuff. So I'm pretty sure that was the cue that it is Nuke that's running around in the Captain Krakoa suit. We'll see. I could be wrong. I appreciate the way they've worked in characters like MODOK, and they're just doing some really interesting things, incorporating regular Marvel Universe stuff into the X-Men, where, like, the Sentinels now all look like Iron Man, because this character Feelong took over Tony Stark's company and then appropriated his technology for the Sentinels. I thought that was kind of brilliant. But so, yeah, so number 3, they didn't, I thought for sure we were getting an answer to who's running around in the Captain Krakoa suit this month. We did not. However, I won't give any spoilers. It sets up a really cool reveal at the end, and very curious to see how that's going to go down. Sets up kind of this whole thing with Captain America taking a stand and talking to the public about mutants and his suspicions about Orcus. And a lot of it is really interesting, because you can kind of tell, you know, comics usually reflect the real world stuff, and there's definite reflection, right? So I thought that was kind of cool, and it wasn't overly preachy. I wasn't feeling like I was being force-fed vegetables. But yeah, I don't know. This book, I'm not going to say it's for everybody. I mean, definitely if you're reading an Immortal and X-Men Red, you could stay just with those 2 titles and you're fine. You're not missing anything with this. But like I said, I took a chance on it, and I liked the first issue. I liked the second issue, and now I'm kind of in. So I'm, at least for right now. So that's Uncanny Avengers number 3. What's the furthest place from here? So I referenced the last time one of these came out that I needed to do a full reread. I didn't do that, but I did reread the last couple. This book is just an absolute pleasure. Matt Rosenberg and Tyler Boss, man, this world is really weird. So there's this whole point in this. The basic setup was the world there's some kind of an apocalyptic event that you believe has happened. And so the reset here are these little communities, these academies of basically kids. And once they grow to an adult, like I guess age 18, these beings called the Strangers that are they're very tall and they're shrouded, so you can't see what they look like. They come and take them. And they also leave babies, or children. So everybody has this childhood among their academy, and there are different academies, and there's kind of a whole socio-political, that's not the right way to say it, but it's a society, and so it has a society's problems. It's really interesting. They're all kind of themed. There's one that's a carnival. The one we start out with is a record store, and everybody like they pick a record that like they identify with as like their god or as like who they are. But all the context of the world before has been removed for them. So it's really interesting in that regard. Like one of the characters is pregnant. She doesn't know that she's pregnant. She doesn't know what that is. So we're now in issue 15, and we're seeing a broader sense of the world. And one of the things I love about this is for a long time, I thought this was going to be a thing where once you see the bigger world, you're going to see that, like, no, the world has not moved on. There hasn't been an apocalyptic event. There's still society. There's just something about where they are that is operating this way, an experiment or whatever. And I don't think that's the case. There's been a couple things, but especially in this issue, we see one of the main characters and we see like a bodily mutation that they have. It's very brief. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? And there's a couple other like little things in here that I'm not quite sure if I'm reading into it, what I'm seeing or not. It looks like there's a scene where one of the characters might start a fire by taking a knife to the palm of her hand. I'm not positive. The art is interesting. It's cartoonish, but in a very like indie comic kind of way. But I love Tyler Boss's art, and I'm really loving this world. And we do kind of get what seems like some definitive answers now at the end of 14 and now at the end of 15. We see kind of the same revelation about the world repeated from two different characters' eyes. And so it kind of offers a recess to like, okay, now where are they going from here? And the line at the end as well, anywhere we want. So we'll see. I'm curious as we start to move around. There's a map one of the characters has of the world. I'm curious to see as that develops. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you dug, I mean, definitely if you dug like the indie stuff of the 80s and 90s, I think you'll dig this. And again, there's some fantastical elements, and they just drop them on the page and then don't reference them again. And you're like, were those fish people? Because it looks like fish people. But okay, we're not going to address that. Cool. Maybe fish people, maybe not. Oh, geez. Someone's killing the children. So this is 34. I opted to spend an extra $1 for this cardstock blank white cover with the mask teeth. I don't know why. This fucking book is just outstanding. I read this issue and I counted. It's 22 pages. I read it and I mean, it had to be 3 minutes. The art and the storytelling is so synergized. Again, I've said this on the show, on previous volumes of the show. I hate that word, but I don't know any other word that expresses that. They work together so well. You will just blow through this fucker. Reminds me a lot of Walking Dead. That's how the Walking Dead comic was. You just read it in 5 minutes. But this was so fast. I was like, wait, was that like 5 pages long? I had to go back and like look and actually count the pages. Because like, this is crazy. Next issue is, I believe, the end of the arc. It's not going where I thought it was going, for sure, which, I mean, is kind of how I thought it was going. But, you know, you have your ideas, and then the last page, I mean, I don't know. It's anybody's bet. But, man, something is killing the children. If you have held off on this, like I did for the first 2 years of its existence because of the hype, don't. Give it a shot. It's just fantastic. It's so good. Louise Simonson, who wrote X Factor back in the 80s, right? So that was really my introduction to the X-Men, was that Louise Simonson X Factor. That was where it was the original X-Men, Scott, Jean, Bobby, Hank, and Angel, as, you know, masquerading as anti-mutant investigators so they could find mutants and help them. She returned to the X books to write this Jean Grey series. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You know, it's this thing where it's like Jean died, right, in the Hellfire Gala. You know, we know she's not dead, but her consciousness has not been destroyed, and so she's going through all these possible scenarios. And so each issue seems to take a different turning point in the Jean Grey life as we know it, and say what if. So it's almost like a what if series, and this issue was the best one yet, and it's because it deals with Madeline Pryor and the Goblin Queen. Huge. I mean, my favorite X-Men story by far, the original Inferno. It's just fantastic. love these characters. I love Nastor. I love Syme. I love all the demonic. I mean, I'm a 11-year-old kid. However old I was when Inferno came out, and I read it, and then here's like, scantily clad gothic sorceresses, and if that's a word, and giant pentagrams open in the sky over New York, raining demons. I mean, it was like, it's so me. And so this was a pretty cool issue. Again, I'm not going to recommend this series to anybody because I don't even know that any of it isn't just these dalliances that nobody needs. But I'm digging it, and it was, for me, it was just to see Louise Simonson return to the character. I thought it was a pretty cool idea, and in this post Hickman world, like I've said before, all the characters I used to love in X-Men, I don't really give a shit about Wolverine, and all the ones that I loathed or just didn't care about, I really like. And so Jean was always one I didn't really give a shit about, and I'm digging her character a lot. So yeah, this is cool. There's a new Marvel previews that came out. I just want to say real fast, I immediately went to it and wanted to see what the solicitations for the X books look like, because we're now in the third month of this 5-month fall of X. So what's on the opposite side of that? And it looks like it is the rise of the powers of X, I believe is what it's called. So it's fall of X and then goes right into that. And apparently everything, they keep advertising this story as it's going to be the end of the Krakoan era. And if that is true, they will have to do a lot to get me to stay on, because I really, really enjoy Krakoa and everything that it's done for the book, everything that started with the Hickman stuff. So if that's the case, I might be dropping out. That's totally fine. I cannot spend whatever it is I spend a month on X books, and it's not going to bother me. But it's interesting. So it's a rise of the powers of X. So it looks like Cyclops is going to stand trial for something, and then there's a book called The Resurrection of Magneto. Hopefully it'll be much better than that. The trial of Magneto is shite. I mean, I read 2 issues. I just hated it. But this is Al Ewing is writing it, and like I said before, we knew Magneto was going to come back at some point. Apparently, everything is going to hinge on his resurrection. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it's going to be, so because Magneto and Storm destroyed their backups in order to gain the respect of the Iraqi, I'm assuming the Magneto that they're going to resurrect is not going to be the one that's all aboard Team Krakoa. Like, I'm wondering if he's going to come back as like a full-on supervillain, which could be kind of boring. But at any rate, it looks like Immortal and Red are done, and what we have is 2 5-issue series. One is Fall of the House of X, and that's written by Jerry Duggan, with art by Lucas Wernick, who does Immortal. And then Rise of the Powers of X, Kieran Gillen's writing it with R.B. Silva as the artist. So, and that one looks like it's 10 years later. So I'm not entirely sure how this is going to play out, because it looks like the resurrection of Magneto is present. It looks like Fall of X is present, but Rise is future. And so I'm thinking it's going to kind of mirror House and Powers, where there was the different, power, like this is 10 years, this is 100 years, this is 1,000 years, something like that. I'm very curious how that'll play out. So, okay. And then last, I just want a Halloween. I'm going to do one this week, one next week. Halloween recommendation. Batman, the Doom That Came to Gotham. So this was recently added to, I think, the DC hub on Max as like an animated series. I haven't watched it yet. I probably will. I don't always have the best love for those, but we'll see. This is Mike Mignola with Richard Pace, Troy Nixie, Dennis Yankee, and Dave Stewart. It's 3 issues, and this is basically taking kind of if you are familiar with Gotham by Gaslight, it's a similar time era, and it basically marries Batman's mythos with Lovecraft's mythos. It's very good. Been meaning to reread this for quite some time. I had an itch for some old Mignola, and I just happened to think about, I landed on the thumbnail on Max as a suggestion. I was like, I could watch this, or I could go back and read the comic again first. Perfect time of year, Halloween. So yeah, it's kind of a Batman horror story. Doom That Came to Gotham. Good time. So that would be my first Halloween recommendation. I'll give you my second one next week. So until then, I am Sean, and I will be drinking, well, at least this glass of this peanut butter pretzel beer, and then probably moving on to something else. But oh man, I got something totally different that time too. Still 3 stars. The other one is better. All right, next week. Hi, I'm Sean. Join me and my friends every week for the Horror Vision, where we talk about horror movies.
A pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive:
the world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure: murder. From the twisted mind of Sean C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadowplay Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.